Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network here. Welcome back to the program. It's good to be back on YouTube at Stillman Co. Like and subscribe. And, of course, we are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. More on them in just a second, as I'm sure a lot of people have had a lot of need for Hiller. Let me start by saying this. First of all, it's great to be back. And I'm sure I got a lot of messages during the week saying, dude, where are you? Dude, where are you? It was a commitment that I could not pass up. I was out of pocket all last week. I was a little able to keep up with some things as they were going on, but I was absolutely out of pocket last week. And I said, hey, I'll be back and we'll be live in San Francisco and we'll be on Radio Row for the Super Bowl, even though I don't host a radio show anymore. But we will, although I was on the radio yesterday, but we will be live in San Francisco. We're live in San Francisco now, but we will be at Radio Row. We got tons of great interviews. We got Adam Shine coming on the show. We got Mad Dog Russo coming on the show this week. Of course, Doggy's going to have to come on the show. We got so many people lined up already that we're going to talk to, but it's not going to be like it used to be. Solomon Wilcots, he and I always yell at each other. He's going to be on the show. It's not going to be the way that it used to be, that it had to be, where I had to fill 4 hours a day and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I don't have to do that anymore. So now it's going to be quality over quantity, which I am very excited about. And I want to thank our video partner, as far as our YouTube partner is concerned, the Believe Network. That's who I'll be here with. And of course, the 440 Sports Network here on Radio Row. Okay. First, let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and then I will get to my reaction of the Robert Saleh press conference, my reaction of the news, and this is big news that Brian Daboll was hired as the offensive coordinator for the Titans. But first, let's talk Hiller. I love Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Trust me, my home, and I hope everybody has got their power back on. I know not everybody has their power back on. In fact, I don't even think my parents have their power back yet. We, Lindsay and Jack, and we got our power back on, I think, Friday. So I get it. And if you've got issues at your home because of this, you need to talk to Hiller today because they will take great care of your home. Again, they take great care of my home. If there was an issue with a pipe based off of something that happened, we'd call Hiller out. If there was an issue with an electrical outlet or, the breaker, or we'd call Hiller out. If there's an issue with your heating, you've got to get that fixed. Call Hiller today. They take great care of my home. They care about the customer. And they can really do the best for you. And I know they will because, again, when it comes to Hiller, I trust them. I don't just endorse them. I trust them. I use them. And I want you guys to feel safe doing the same thing. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds of Falls and Vandy. Hiller, call that fish truck today. Okay. I do want to acknowledge before we get going on the Salah thing, Joe says the Darnold jersey in the background. So that is, if you're looking at the stream, that is the Sam Darnold jersey shirt. And then there is the Jackson Smith and Jigba jersey shirt. Let me just be clear. I am rooting for Seattle, in case you didn't know this in the Super Bowl, because Seattle represents what I would be the most right about, Sam Darnold. And the Patriots represent what I would be the most wrong about, Mike Vrabel. And so this, to me, is the Jared Stillman Super Bowl. And so for the Super Bowl party that we're going to go to, and I'm sure many of you are going to go to a Super Bowl party, for our Super Bowl party, there's a shop right across the street from the hotel that has all the Super Bowl gear. And I told Lindsay, I said, they got a Sam Darnold shirt. And Lindsay was like, I need it's got the Super Bowl logo. She's like, I need the Sam Darnold shirt. And then I saw the little baby Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I was like, oh my God, Darnold and Smith and Jigba, or Jackson Stillman Jigba. So Lil Jack going to be wearing his Smith and Jigba shirt for the Super Bowl. Because again, I don't know about you guys, and I'm not going to be one of these people. I saw Jim Wyatt said this when it came to Vrabel, who said, I don't think that let me do my Jim Wyatt. I love Jimmy, but I don't think Mike Vrabel would have the Titans in the Super Bowl in 2025. And he's right. Will Levis and Tim Kelly are not getting to the Super Bowl. But Vrabel's in the Super Bowl. And I don't want Vrabel to win the Super Bowl. Because if Vrabel wins the Super Bowl, then everybody who said, this is the dumbest thing you could ever do, they'll be right. And I think the Patriots are lucky. I think Vrabel is lucky. But we shall see. So, yes, there is the Darnold jersey in the back. Okay, let's get to Salah, because that's what a lot of you people want to talk about. That's what a lot of you people are here for. Let's get to the week that was for Robert Saleh and, of course, the hiring of Brian Daboll. So let's start with the press conference. So I watched the press conference, and when it came to Salah, when it came to the option of Salah, and I go back to the whole list, right? Whether it's Arthur Smith, or whether it was Matt Nagy, or whether it was Mike McCarthy, or whether it was, I said, I don't know these guys. You know, if I knew these guys, it'd be easier for me to tell you, oh, yeah, no, this guy's a good coach, or, oh, no, that guy's a bad coach. Like Joe Brady with the Bills. I have no idea how that's going to work out. I don't know Joe Brady. So when it comes to assessing Robert Saleh, I looked at his resume. He was 20-36 as head coach of the Jets. There was a lot of clown shit that went on when he was the head coach of the Jets. But there's always a lot of clown shit that goes on with the Jets. And that happened before Robert Saleh got there. And that's continuing well after Robert Saleh has left. So I have a hard time pinning all of that Jets 20-36 record on Robert Saleh. What bothered me the most about the week that was, really starting when Saleh had his press conference Thursday, is how many of you people just want to completely ignore the 20-36. See, I watched the Saleh press conference, and I thought that he was composed. I thought he was confident. I thought he, really articulated his message for what he wanted the team to hear. But I think that most of that stuff doesn't really matter. There were fans on the internet over the week that were like, oh my God, look at all the players that are here. Cam Ward's here. Jeffrey Simmons is here. This guy's here. That guy's here. Oh my God, he's our leader. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't matter. And again, I'm happy that the players want somebody to sit there and to say, hey, we're behind the coach, but we don't know if they're going to be behind the coach or not, because they don't know if they're going to be behind the coach. They don't know the coach. He hasn't coached them yet. Again, no player showed up to Mike Vrabel's press conference. Did that mean he was a bad leader? Of course not. And I almost felt like reading the reaction to the Saleh press conference reminded me a lot of Callahan, where Callahan had a good opening press conference and everybody's like, oh my God, what a breath of fresh air. This guy, he knows football. This guy, he knows offense. This guy, he's going to develop Will Levis. This guy, he's not going to be big bad Vrabel. He's not going to be, and again, none of that really matters. So when people were getting all excited, and I can't even remember what Saleh said. What was it? Like fast and aggressive? We're going to play fast and aggressive. And he kept saying it, violent and aggressive, or fast and violent, or whatever. I don't give a shit about that. And by the way, big ups to TD, because TD asked the question. I totally forgot about this shit. But TD asked the question about, when you were with the Jets, you were all gas, no brakes. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about that. Those slogans, they don't mean anything. And everything Saleh said, that the reaction that people liked over on Thursday and Friday, everything he said, if Saleh loses, they're going to hate. So again, the violent and aggressive and stuff like that, guy gets a 15-yard penalty and the team is 1-4, and it's going to be like, you're just violent and aggressive. You don't play football the right way. So all that, that stuff doesn't matter to me. Like, what mattered to me was what he said when asked about Brian Daboll. And not, the Earhart-Perkins system, and not what happens if Daboll leaves, and I don't care about that shit. He said he's giving Brian Daboll the offense. That is important to me. That's what matters. That as of right now, as I said, when they hired Robert Saleh, as Jake Asman came on our show, covers the Jets, came on our show the day they hired Saleh, and he said it's going to be all about the offensive coordinator. I'm going to get a lot of guys from Sirius XM that I work with at Mad Dog Radio to come on the show this week here at the Super Bowl because they know Salah and they know Daboll in New York. And everybody kept saying, it's all about the offensive coordinator. It's all about the offensive coordinator. It's all about the offensive coordinator. And I really wanted to know, can Robert Salah truly say, I'm giving the offense to Daboll? And he did. And that takes me to point number 2. Because I understand how Titan fans want to beat their chest and their guys can do no wrong. And Robbie Stanley and I were texting about this last night. It is so reminiscent of Rand and Callahan and just, our guys, they can do no wrong, when really all Rand and Callahan did was wrong. But when it comes to this thing being a success, and forget about the granular details. Like, we're not there yet to talk about whether or not they should sign Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency. And we're not there yet to talk about whether or not they should go after Breece Hall or should they go draft Mekhi Lemon. We're not there yet. I know you want to be there, and I get it, but we're not there yet. When it comes to this thing working out, it's really about 5 guys, right? Mike Borgonzi, the general manager who picks the players. I understand he's got a scouting staff. I understand he's got an entire committee that works for him or that works with him, however you want to parse it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to turning the card in and who you're going to pick, that goes in the win column for Borgonzi and that goes in the loss column for Borgonzi. So he's the one who matters and all those other people work for him. And he's got to make the decision. Do we take Johnny? Do we take Jimmy? He's the first guy. The second guy is Robert Salah, the head coach. The third guy is Cam Ward. Because, again, Borgonzi is tied to Ward. And if it doesn't work with Ward, it's probably not going to work for Borgonzi. And if it doesn't work for Ward, it's probably not going to work for Salah. And then there's Brian Daboll. And of that group, of all those guys who, again, those 4 who are really the most important guys, nobody else matters that much. Of those 4, Brian Daboll is the one that I really have faith in. I understand Robert Salah had good defenses with the Jets, and I think that's important. Because even though Robert Salah wasn't calling the plays, I think play calling is overrated as to whether or not a head coach does it. I thought Salah did himself no favors with the comment that he made about, well, I just felt like I was the red flag and timeout guy, because I understand that he said, the quote from the clip was, and New York Twitter went nuts about this, but the quote from the clip was, I just felt like not calling the plays. I joked with Borgo, talking about Borgonzi. God, I hate that. I joked with Borgo. I joked, hey, I just called timeouts and threw the flag, but my game day of calling the plays, of the, hey, this is what we're going to run, this is what we're going to do, like I didn't have that in New York, and that blew up, and I didn't think that was a big deal. But Salah has shown that he can run a defense. He's shown it in San Francisco, and he's shown it with the Jets. Robert Salah showed zero ability when it came to the offensive side of the ball in New York. His offenses were terrible. They busted on Zach Wilson. They did not improve a lot of offensive players. Yes, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall were good, but those guys were drafted and they were already good. They lost a lot of games because of their offense with him as the coach. It didn't work out with Michael LaFleur for whatever reason, who just took the Arizona Cardinal job. And it absolutely did not work out with Nathaniel Hackett or Todd Downing. And I would say I feel pretty comfortable to think that Robert Salah can't hire an offensive coaching staff when, again, in the end of New York, he was hiring Todd Downing and Keith Carter. So Brian Daboll has to be the head coach of the offense. When I saw Brasillo, the offensive line coach, that's a guy who's got a reputation, and it's a good reputation around the NFL. That was a guy that a lot of people thought hey, when John Harbaugh gets the Giants job, John Harbaugh needs to make sure that he keeps Carmen Brasillo in check, the offensive line coach. And I thought to myself, if you get Brian Daboll, you need to get Brian Daboll's offensive line coach. I'm fine with that. Whoever he wants on his coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, whoever Daboll wants, put him in there. Because I don't think Robert Saleh can hire offensive coaches, and that's fine. That is fine. Brian Daboll will handle that. I do not necessarily believe in Mike Borgonzi to pick players. Now, that doesn't mean that I think he's a bad general manager or that I think it's impossible that Mike Borgonzi could pick good players. I think it's impossible to think that Rand Carthon could ever consistently pick good players. He was drafting right tackles with the 7th pick to play left tackle. He was drafting run-stuffing DTs at the top of the 2nd round. So Rand Carthon could have never picked good players. I don't know if Borgonzi can or can't pick good players. As of right now, Mike Borgonzi's picked a punt returner. That's it. I mean, it's crazy that the leading sacker and the leading receiver were both drafted by a guy 3 GMs ago, which is kind of crazy. But Mike Borgonzi, we'll see. I just didn't see anything in year one that made me think like, oh yeah, this guy, he really knows what he's doing. So that's the first one. You know, again, with Borgonzi, we're going to see. Because he's going to pick the players. I do not want Robert Saleh picking the players. I do not want Brian Daboll picking the players. Those guys do not put the work in, especially Daboll. I saw it on Hard Knocks. Those guys are coaches. They need to be like Jeff Fisher. You can be involved a little bit, but you don't need to pick the players. And Mike Borgonzi is going to have to go out and get some good players. So that's the first guy. And again, I don't have a ton of faith in Borgonzi. Then when it comes to Ward, I don't have a lot of faith in Ward. But if anybody was going to get it out of Ward, I think Daboll might be the right guy. I really am optimistic about Brian Daboll, even though I am pessimistic about Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's limitations are going to keep Cam Ward from ever being an elite quarterback. My biggest fear is that Cam Ward is going to be like Kyler Murray or Tua, where he shows enough where if you want to believe in Cam Ward, you'll give Cam Ward the second contract. He won't be like J.J. McCarthy, who sucks right away, but that you'll never really win with Cam because of Cam's limitations. But I could be wrong. And I feel like if there's anybody to get the best out of Cam Ward, I think it's Brian Daboll. I think if you look at Brian Daboll has had success in a lot of ways, both in the NFL and in college running offenses. Because the kind of offense that you need to run for Tua to be successful is not the same offense you run for Josh Allen. The offense that you need to run for Jalen Hurts is not necessarily the same offense you'd run for Daniel Jones. And so what that's done is it tells me that Brian Daboll can be very multiple and can be very adaptive. We saw in New York the first year that Daboll was the head coach. And again, he didn't call the plays, but he ran the offense. And when it came to Daboll, they were focused on Saquon Barkley running the ball. If the Titans were to go out and commit to running the ball, I think that would be best for Cam Ward. And I know Brian Daboll is not going to be afraid to do it. And then comes the actual coaching of the quarterback. Robert Saleh said this, and I don't know if you guys heard it, but when I heard it, I thought about a lot of you people. But he said, we got to start from square one with Cam Ward. In fact, I heard that, and I laughed so hard because I kept telling you people last year, I was like, do not draft a quarterback who you have to develop with a coach you don't even know is any good. Oh, no, Jared Callahan needs a quarterback that he picked, and so we need to give him the. And so now forget about last year. It doesn't count. Doesn't matter. When it comes to his mechanics, this is going to be a very long and arduous process, I believe. But I think Daboll can help him. And there's one quarterback that I can think of off the top of my head who was not an overly accurate passer. And I shouldn't say wasn't an accurate passer, but wasn't a consistently accurate passer in the NFL who has blossomed into a great and accurate passer, and that's Josh Allen. And the guy who coached Josh Allen was Brian Daboll. So, again, of this group, Robert Saleh, to me, he's a 20-36 coach until proven otherwise. And I hope that we can look back on Saleh's tenure in New York and we can say, boy, those stupid, stinky Jets, the same organization that Bill Belichick didn't want to coach because he's like, if I coach the Jets, it's going to ruin me. And so he didn't. Todd Bowles failed with the Jets. He's found success in Tampa. The stupid, stinky Jets. Maybe it's all them. I hope it's all them. But right now, there's really no proof that it was all them and none of Robert Saleh. And so at 20-36, that's who Saleh is. Now, I think Saleh can put together a good defense. And this team's going to have to do a lot of work personnel-wise. And I don't know if they're going to be able to use a lot of draft capital on the defensive side of the ball because they need help on offense. So when it comes to a guy like Oladejo or a guy like Kevin Winston, or those guys are going to have to play and they're going to have to fit in and they're going to have to make it work. And then when they take those guys, they're going to have to blossom into, I'm not going to say stars, but they're going to have to blossom into consistent contributors. And I don't know if Saleh did that with the Jets, only because I didn't follow it close enough. And when it comes to the Jets, again, this is just my basic knowledge of it with Saleh as the coach. When I think of their defense and the guys that were really good, I mean, they had a lot of good players, right? Like Sauce Gardner is a really good player, and Quinnen Williams is a really good player, and they drafted pass rushers in the first round, and they had the other corner, number 4, Reed. I think he was pretty good. And so was that Saleh coaching him up? Because Saleh's going to have to coach up Oladejo. Saleh's going to have to coach up Cedric Gray. Saleh's going to have to coach up T'Vondre Sweat. Well, he doesn't fit the scheme. Figure it out. Again, be multiple. Figure it out. Because that's what coaching really is. And I think Saleh can do that with the defense. Now, if Saleh has to get involved with the offense at all, I think he's got no shot. If there's anything I take away from his New York experience, it's that he needs to be as far away from the control panel on the offensive side of the football as possible, whether that is offensive players or whether that is offensive philosophy or whether that's offensive coaches or whatever it may be. Saleh needs to stay away. The only thing Saleh needs to deal with on offense is, are we going for it on 4th down? That's your call. You're the head coach. Do you go for 2? That's your call. You're the head coach. And you've got to communicate this with Daboll as the game's going on, because if it's 4th and short, but you don't have a play that Daboll likes to run, then go punt. But if it's 4th and 2 and Daboll's like, I know this play will work, maybe if you're Robert Saleh, then you do go for it. That's going to be up to him. And that is the job of the head coach. And then the other thing that's important is managing personnel is the head coach's job. Now, I didn't say acquiring personnel is the head coach's job, because that's the general manager's job. But when there are disputes, both public and private, that's Robert Saleh's job. So if there's an issue between 2 players on the offensive side of the ball, or an offensive player and a defensive player, Robert Saleh has to solve the dispute. If there's an issue between a player and the public, whether it's offense or defense, Robert Saleh has to deal with it. And then when it comes to the quarterback, and this was something he did not do a good job of with the Jets, he's got to defend the quarterback. If the quarterback's doing well, he's got to defend him. If the quarterback is not doing well, then he's got to pump him up, or he's got to do something. He cannot do what he did in New York when he got up to the podium and threw Zach Wilson under the bus. You cannot do it. And by the way, Rossi, I do read the comments in the chat, and stop worrying about what I'm reading into or what I'm not reading into. Just hear what's coming out of my mouth. When you guys are all getting worked up about, oh my God, we hired a quarterback coach no one's ever heard of. Yeah, bye-bye. While you guys are doing that, I am telling you what really matters, or at least what really matters to me. Getting all worked up in the YouTube chat. I need Mike Borgonzi this offseason to give me a reason to believe in him. If you believe in Mike Borgonzi, I think that you believe in Mike Borgonzi because you want to believe in Mike Borgonzi. I deal with the facts. And the facts say that Mike Borgonzi, as a general manager, inherited a 3-win football team with the number 1 overall pick. And Mike Borgonzi's 3-win football team did not win a single game more in his first year as general manager than they did the year before. That's not good. Secondly, even though they knew they were going to be bad, did they know they were going to be the same level of bad? Third, Cam Ward is still very much up in the air. And I believe that it's probably more likely than not that Cam is going to fail. Maybe Cam will be successful. A lot of you think that Cam Ward was a hit in the draft. And I'm here to tell you it's way too early to be saying that. The second rounder got hurt, didn't play much, didn't do much when he did play. The third rounder was hurt when they drafted him. He then got hurt again, didn't do much last year. They got they got 3 useful players in the 4th round. A backup tight end, a number 4 receiver, and a punt returner who I think has potential to be a number 2 receiver. That's solid. They signed a left tackle in free agency who everybody thought when they signed him was average, and he played average. So when it comes to Mike Borgonzi, I need a reason to believe in him. And again, if you believe in him, I think you believe in him because you want to believe in him, but he hasn't done anything yet to make us think that he's a good general manager. And if he can't go out and get good players for Robert Saleh, then it doesn't matter. I want Robert Saleh to give me reasons to believe in him and that his disastrous clown show tenure in New York was really about the fact that New York is a clown show organization. I mean, I'm willing to believe in the instance of Borgonzi and in Salah, I'm willing to believe that those things can be true. I think there's a chance Mike Borgonzi might be a good personnel man. Now, there's really not a lot of proof of that, but maybe he can be. And the same is true for Salah. Maybe Salah is a great leader. Maybe Salah is Mike Vrabel 2.0. Again, I don't think he's Mike Vrabel 2.0, but maybe he is. And the New York Jets are just so stupid and such a poorly run organization. And Woody Johnson's head is so far up his ass that they just got rid of Mike Vrabel 2.0. Maybe. And I want to believe in Cam. But there wasn't a lot this year that made me really think I could believe in Cam. But Brian Daboll, he's got the resume that says, hey, he can be an offensive coordinator and he can develop quarterbacks. And that's why I am latching on like crazy to the idea that Brian Daboll can save this football team and can make Cam Ward a passable quarterback that you can win games with. Kind of the way that Mike Mularkey made Marcus Mariota a quarterback you could win games with, even though in the end Marcus Mariota was limited. So that's first thing. Now, the second thing that I have a really hard time believing is I have a hard time believing, and I say this with all due respect, I really have a hard time believing that Robert Saleh had some sort of transformational plan when it came to interviewing for the job that was going to unleash Cam Ward. You know, Albert Breer is going to be here at the Super Bowl. In fact, I need to text him because I need to check in with Bert. We need to get Bert on the show because Albert Breer, put out there when the Titans hired Robert Saleh that Robert Saleh wowed the committee with his plan for Cam Ward. And that Robert Saleh, with this plan that wowed the committee for Cam Ward, had plans in place in case, hey, Brian Daboll is the offensive coordinator, does a really good job, and then he gets hired away as a head coach. Well, I've got a backup plan for that if and when that happens, and that's what we're going to do. Now, when he was asked about that plan, he basically said, well, it's the job of the head coach to coach the assistant coaches. And that's true. But again, I don't want Robert Saleh doing anything with the offense. I don't want Robert Saleh to hire the offensive coaches. And I certainly don't want Robert Saleh to develop the offensive coaches because Robert Saleh doesn't know how to do that. And Robert Saleh has shown in the past that he really can't. I mean, Bill Belichick was a great coach in the NFL. It's a total travesty that Bill Belichick did not get put into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I was yelling and screaming about that on XM yesterday. But Bill Belichick wasn't the greatest developer of offensive coaches. Now, yes, Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien, Brian Daboll, some of those guys did come up on the offensive side of the ball through Belichick. But if you go look at when they built the Patriots dynasty, the Brady Patriots dynasty, they were Parcells guys on the offensive side of the ball. Dante Scarnecchia, the line coach. He was a legendary line coach for how long he was there. Charlie Weiss, the offensive coordinator. Dick Rabine, the quarterback's coach. The guy that stood on the table for Tom Brady. Ivan Fears, the running backs coach. I mean, those were guys that had been around for a long time. Bill didn't have a lot of turnover on the offensive coaching staff. Vrabel gets to New England, and I think one of the biggest keys to Mike Vrabel's success has been the fact that Robert Kraft hired the offensive coordinator for him. So instead of Todd Downing or Tim Kelly calling the plays and trying to develop Drake May, it's Josh McDaniels, one of the better coordinators in the league. Salah has no experience doing this, or at least no good experience, because it didn't work with Mike LaFleur the first time. And then his second choice was Nathaniel Hackett and Todd Downing. This is, here you go, Daboll. So if it's just as simple as, here you go, Daboll, here's the offensive side of the ball. If that's the case, and Cam Ward develops into a superstar, well, I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm keeping Daboll and I'm firing Salah. And I would never tell Robert Saleh that. And I would never tell anybody else that. But if what happens to Cam Ward is what happened to Josh Allen in Buffalo, I'm not keeping Salah and then asking Salah to go find the next Brian Daboll or asking Robert Saleh to develop the next Brian Daboll. I'm firing Robert Saleh and I'm making Brian Daboll the head coach. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the Buffalo Bills decided this week that's what we're going to do too. We're not going to let Joe Brady go to the Ravens. We're not going to let Joe Brady go somewhere else because we think it'll throw a wrench into our offense. So, Joe Brady, you're now the head coach. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's the only plan that would make sense to me. If you're banking the franchise on Cam Ward, and Brian Daboll, who's in charge of Cam Ward and is in charge of the plan for Cam Ward and is in charge of the development of Cam Ward and is essentially in charge of the philosophy around Cam Ward and is the one implementing the scheme, and they're using his lingo as the coach, and he's coaching the quarterback, and the quarterback becomes a superstar, then I'm not losing that guy. And maybe that's the Titans' plan. I don't know. But I find it very hard to believe that there was some sort of unbelievable plan for Cam Ward that won over everybody in the room from a defensive coach who I don't want doing anything with the Titans offense other than, again, deciding when to go for it on fourth down. That's how I feel. So I had a hard time with that unbelievable plan. And I had a hard time with Salah when he was asked about, okay, so, let's say Daboll does get a head coaching job, then what's your plan? Well, we want to develop coaches, and that's our job as coaches, is develop coaches that, Again, that gobbledygook sounds good, but, Vrabel was the same way. Arthur Smith was a good offensive coordinator. I don't know what happened in Pittsburgh. Apparently, everybody in Pittsburgh thinks Arthur Smith sucks. I don't know what happened in Atlanta. Apparently, everybody in Atlanta thinks Arthur Smith sucks. Arthur Smith was a really good offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. Arthur Smith left, and the guys Mike Vrabel hired couldn't coach. And again, I think if Robert Kraft did not hire Josh McDaniels for Mike Vrabel would be without a paddle up the creek with one of his bozo buddies as the offensive coordinator. I feel the same way about Salah. I don't trust Salah's ability to move on from one guy to the next guy to the next guy to the next guy. So if I have success with Cam Ward, I'm firing Salah and I'm promoting Daboll. If I was in the situation the Seattle Seahawks are in, where they're losing Clint Kubiak, I'd be firing the head coach and making the offensive coordinator the head coach. So that's kind of my big takeaway. But my biggest takeaway is it amazes me. And this is not specific to the Titans, but it does truly amaze me how the Titans can hire a coach. And again, no disrespect to Salah when I say this. He's 20-36. And they can hire a 20-36 coach. And I am going into this open-minded. Like Salah can be a good coach. Let's see. I don't know that. I don't know that Salah is a total boob, and that's why they went 20-36 in New York. And I don't know that Salah is Mike Vrabel 2.0, where the Jets held him back, and he's actually a genius. I don't know. I'm open to it. They hire him. He holds a press conference, and immediately it's like, oh my God, this is the leader we need. This is the leader we have to have. Oh my God, this guy. He's Jared. How can you not think that we're going to the Super Bowl because we got this guy? And I'm like, you do know the story about the leaks in New York, right? Salah called a staff meeting in New York, and like a ninth graders that got caught with a joint, Salah asked the coaches, whoever the leaker is, please come forward. Whoever the leaker is, if you come forward, I promise you won't get in any trouble. I promise you that. And then when nobody came forward, he threatened to take their cell phones. Now, like, to me, that's not a sign of a stable organization. And that's Robert Saleh talking to his coaches. That's not Joe Douglas's fault. That's not even technically Woody Johnson's fault. That is a paranoid Robert Saleh. I read in the Athletic story, Diana Rossini, Zach Rosenblatt, when he got fired from the Jets, Saleh was very, very worried about the criticism that he was taking publicly. He kept notes of the fact that he felt like the Giants got more preferential treatment than the Jets in New York. That is some of the stupidest shit. Now, I'm aware of the fact that Mike Vrabel is sensitive to criticism. Vrabel will pretend like he's not, but trust me, Vrabel absolutely is sensitive when it comes to criticism. But at the same time, you can't have that be something that other people notice about you and then say, well, you know, one of his problems as coach was he was too worried about WFAN saying good things about the Giants. I can't have the, Robert Saleh's really mad because Vanderbilt lost to Georgia this week and nobody talked about it and nobody got on to Clark Lee, but everybody is yelling and screaming about the fact that the Titans lost by 28 on the road to the Texans. It's like, yeah, welcome to the NFL, babe. Can't let that stuff bother you. That's like when me and the radio station broke up. And somebody told me that our competition, and that was real competition, which it had never been before, but somebody told me that, oh yeah, they were talking shit about you, and I said, look, they can talk shit. It's not going to bother me. It is what it is. I talk shit, they talk shit. It's the game. Go ahead, talk shit. Cannot be too sensitive to the criticism. So I'm not going to pretend those things didn't happen. I am open-minded enough to believe that Robert Saleh did learn from his first time in New York. I'm open-minded enough to believe that there's a chance Robert Saleh could be a really good coach. But the amount of you people out there that just believe it, that are like, yes, yes, Cam Ward showed up for his press conference. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. That's the stuff where I'm like, really? Can we keep it back here on planet Earth? You do know this guy hired Todd Downing, right? Like his last act as head coach of the Jets was demoting Nathaniel Hackett and giving the play calling to Todd Downing. And that's the same guy that you people are, yes, yes, yes. So can we just make like agree that I'm not going to sit here and throw Salah under the bus for the threatening to take the assistant coach's cell phones and go through them, which is so elementary and so paranoid as coach of the Jets. I'm not going to go, the 20-36 record, it is what it is, but that doesn't mean he can't coach. I'm open to that being a Jets problem. But you have to be open to the fact that Robert Saleh needs to prove it before you just tell me that you just hired a great coach. And I think it's the same way with Cam. And Cam needs to prove that he's a franchise quarterback before you guys start anointing him the next Mahomes and unretiring jersey numbers for him. Well, I guess that cat's out of the bag. Mike Borgonzi needs to draft some all-pros on offense and defense, not just a punt returner, before we anoint him the next Howie Roseman. And it's possible. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. So when it comes to the week of Titan Bowl, that's where I'm at. And the coaching staff's coming together along fine enough for me. I do wonder if you guys figured out, because I did not figure this out, where Robert Saleh was for a couple days before he showed up in Nashville, but I guess that's neither here nor there. Let's get to your reaction on some of it here on the program. Your reaction, Trent says, welcome back. Hope you made it through the storms without any damage. I mean, it depends on what you mean by damage. I don't think we have internet at the house right now, and I mean, there definitely was a lot of damage, a lot of tree damage, this is going to be an expensive storm for a lot of people. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you about what NES should be doing or not be doing, because I am not smart enough to know how the electrical grid works or what the abilities are or are not. I'm not going to take some online conspiracies and say, oh my God, did you see what they said that NES did this or that? But the city can't have people going 2 weeks without power. It just, in the middle of an ice storm, it's just going to get a lot of people killed. And it's one of the things for me where if you can't get it fixed that fast, then you need to start operating Plan B. Like, you need to start putting in generators, and you need to help those people get back on their feet, and then you got to do something. But I'm not smart enough. I'm not qualified to be able to have an opinion as to what they should or should not do. One person says, Cam isn't a bust, but he's definitely not a superstar. They could have waited until the second or third round, realistically. I mean, they couldn't have waited until the second or third round for a quarterback. I mean, I guess they could have waited until the second round and drafted Tyler Shuck, but that's in hindsight. Or I guess they could have waited for Shedeur Sanders. Here's what I'll say. And I have told you guys, and I have told the Titans this. If Seattle wins on Sunday, and to be completely honest with you, I think Seattle is going to win. And I think Seattle is going to win big. Seattle has been the best team in the NFL all year. I had a guy on Sirius yesterday from the VSiN Sports Network, Gil Alexander. Gil Alexander said that according to Aaron Schatz at Football Outsiders, the Patriots had the third easiest DVOA, which is that nerd stat that guys like Willie Donick love so much. They had the third easiest schedule via DVOA since 1978. Apparently, they're the 16th worst Super Bowl team to make the Super Bowl via DVOA since 1978. Whatever that means. I'll say this about the Patriots. If they're going to beat the Seahawks, they're going to have to really do it. Like, they're not going to get lucky unless there's an injury to Sam Darnold, knock on wood. They're not going to get lucky the way they got lucky with C.J. Stroud just crapping the ball out of his ass, or Sean Payton going for it with a backup quarterback like an idiot. I mean, that's not going to happen in the Super Bowl. So I think Seattle's going to win. And I have told you people, and I've told the Titans, I am going to be insufferable if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl. Because as much as you people out there, TDG, would like to say, well, there's no way Sam would have done that here. The question is not whether or not Sam Darnold would have won the Super Bowl this year with the Titans. The question is, who's better, Sam or Cam? And the question is, who's better for the next 3 years? And I'll argue that Sam Darnold is the better player for the next 3 years. Again, you don't want to hear it. You're going to get mad at me every time I bring it up. That was the mistake that was made. Now, when it comes to Cam's not a bust, but he's definitely not a superstar, I think the jury is out on both of those. I think it is very unlikely that Cam Ward is going to become a superstar quarterback, but it's not impossible. I also don't think he has yet established himself as a bust, even though if I was a betting man, I would bet on bust, if that helps. Cam has not established himself as anything in the NFL yet. Jury's out. Just like the jury's still out on pretty much all these quarterbacks. The jury is still out on Tyler Shuck. Now, it looks like Tyler Shuck can play, but we don't know that. The jury is out on Shedeur Sanders. The jury is out on Jackson Dart. Nobody knows if Jackson Dart's going to be good. I said this when he beat the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. And I said, Jackson Dart, to me, seems like the love child between Joe Namath and Will Levis. And I don't know which one he's going to be more of. Is he going to be more of Joe Namath, or is he going to be more of Will Levis? I don't know. That's where Cam is right now. And if you think it's anything more than that, you're kidding yourself. Now, I think guys like Caleb, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May have all proven they're going to be hits. And I think J.J. McCarthy's probably going to be a bust. I still think Bo Nix is a little bit in between. Whitty says, you can never be happy. Well, I mean, I just told you I'm very happy with Brian Daboll. I mean, I need Mike Borgonzi to prove to me that he's a good general manager, which he hasn't done. I need Robert Saleh to prove to me that he's a competent head coach, which he hasn't done. I need Cam Ward to prove to me that he's a number one quarterback, which he hasn't done. But Brian Daboll has proven to me that he can develop a quarterback, that he can adjust based upon his personnel, and that he's a good offensive coordinator. So when you say I can never be happy, I'm telling you right now, I am very happy with the hiring of Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator for the Titans. I think if this is going to work, I think it's going to work in large part because of Daboll. And maybe in the end, that'll be a bad thing. Again, I don't understand what makes a good offensive coordinator or a bad offensive coordinator anymore, since everybody tells me that Arthur Smith stinks when I watched Arthur Smith light up the scoreboard with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Well, Jared, he had Derrick Henry and he had A.J. Brown. So did Todd Downing. They didn't light up the scoreboard with Todd Downing as the coordinator. They did with Arthur. But I guess that doesn't make him a good offensive coordinator, so I don't know what makes you a good offensive coordinator. In my book, if you can develop a quarterback and you can score points, you're a good offensive coordinator, and Brian Daboll's done that. So that's why I'm happy with Brian Daboll. So if you're saying that I'm never happy about the Titans in general, well, the Titans are the worst team in ball right now. They've got a general manager who's on his second year, didn't improve the club by one game last year, and they just hired a coach who's 20-36. What am I supposed to be so happy about? But I am telling you what I am optimistic with, which is Brian Daboll. So don't tell me I can't be happy. Like, just let it be. Which is crazy. One guy says, way too early to say he isn't good, but you've seen enough to call him a bust. Again, what I say when it comes to Cam is I'm betting on it. I'm betting that he will bust because Cam has physical limitations, which will keep him from being a superstar quarterback. And up until this point, the Titans have done nothing to support him. And so now Mike Borgonzi has to get him players, and Robert Saleh has to manage them, and Brian Daboll has to coach him. And again, the one thing that I have a proof of concept of is that Brian Daboll can coach him. But Cam becoming consistently accurate, I've never seen that. I mean, I know you want to pretend it in your head that it's possible, and it is possible. But because it's possible, you want to assume that it's going to happen, and I'm not going to do that. So if I had to bet, I would bet that Cam's going to bust. But he's not a bust yet. Like J.J. McCarthy is a bust. He will not be the quarterback next year in Minnesota, which, by the way, the teenager in me really laughed my ass off on Friday when I saw that Kwesi Adafo-Mensah, the general manager in Minnesota, Rand's analytic buddy from the 49ers, got canned. And I just laughed so hard. I saw that and I was like Santa. Ho, ho, ho. What did he do wrong in Minnesota? What did they do wrong? But then the healthy adult in me says, you know, if I own the team in Minnesota, I don't think there'd be anybody who's more upset about Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl than me, because you know that I really believe in Sam Darnold. But the general manager and the coach, they made a mistake. They thought they won all those games because of them. And everybody told them that they won all those games because of them. Kevin O'Connell was voted coach of the year last year. You people told me that Minnesota won all those games because of Kevin O'Connell. So, of course, Kevin O'Connell's going to believe that Kevin O'Connell is the secret sauce. That's a mistake they'll never make again. But if you're Minnesota and you fire everybody for it, then you'll hire an inexperienced general manager or an inexperienced coach or both, and then they'll make mistakes too because they haven't had the experience to make the mistakes to learn from them. That's just me. But who knows? Just reading through your comments, even though Rossi came into the chat and was like, Jared never reads the comments. One guy says, Jared, suppose Cam becomes a star and the Titans defense becomes number one in the league. Do you still fire Salah to keep or promote Daboll? Yes. If Cam Ward becomes a superstar, it will be because Brian Daboll is coaching him. He will not have another offensive coordinator before it is determined whether or not he's a star. Plain and simple. If he becomes a star, then I'm not going to lose Brian Daboll. And that means I'll fire Robert Saleh. Ask yourself this. What would you rather have, the number one defense and an average quarterback, or would you rather have the number one quarterback and an average defense? And the answer is you'd rather have the number one quarterback and an average defense. Or you could be Seattle and you could have this great quarterback and a great defense. One person says the comparing of Salah to Vrabel, from what I saw, was hoping that he would replicate what he did. No. The comparing was that it was a defensive coach and that this guy was going to be the leader of men, unlike Brian Callahan. Let me say this when it comes to Brian Callahan. And I have no idea how good of a coach Clint Kubiak will or will not be with the Raiders. I have no idea how good of a coach Mike LaFleur will be with the Arizona Cardinals. You can be an offensive coach and you can call the plays during the game and you can still have a ball sack. And that was the problem with Brian Callahan. He didn't have one. So he couldn't hold anybody accountable. Now, there is a difference between Mike Vrabel and not having a ball sack. It's not just either or. And so a lot of people look at Salah, and I don't know if Salah has balls or not. I think he probably has better ones than Callahan. But just because a guy's got balls doesn't mean he's Mike Vrabel. Just because a guy's a defensive coach doesn't mean he's Mike Vrabel. What I believe is Robert Saleh is coming here to be the defensive version of Kyle Shanahan. Like, hey, I'm going to guru up the defense. Dabes, you got the offense, baby. And that's nothing like Vrabel. Because Vrabel never just gave the offense to somebody and said, here you go, Arthur. Vrabel was always in there. You know that. Dabes. Hate when people do stuff like that. One guy says, let's win more than 3 games before we talk about it being a number 1 defense and Cam becoming a superstar. Amen. Then again, I am talking about how if things end up things end up succeeding, I have said that when it comes to Daboll, I would keep him. And that's hey, if Cam Ward becomes a star, which there is not a proof of concept that Cam Ward is going to be a star. Okay, we will be live out at Radio Row. I don't exactly know how I'm going to do this. I'll probably tape a lot of stuff, and we'll have a lot of things that are taped that will not be live throughout the course of the week. But then that way I feel like we can get you the best content throughout the course of the day. But we will be at Radio Row tomorrow. I've already picked up my credential. I'm very, very excited. I love the Super Bowl. This is my 4th Super Bowl. And we'll have tons of content. Tomorrow at, I think it's going to be at 3:30 Central Time. I want to make sure I get this right. Tomorrow at 3:30 Central Time, I will be going on the Felger and Maz program in Boston. And boy, do I have a lot to atone for. Because they are basically going to ask me, you came on this show last year and you said the great Mike Vrabel isn't that great. And I have thought about this. My official stance on Vrabel. And I want you people to help me decide when it comes to my stance on Vrabel. Because I see both sides of it. I do think Vrabel is probably a better coach than we gave him credit for. I mean, I thought Vrabel was a good coach. At points in time, I thought Vrabel was the best coach in the league. I still think Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Andy Reid are better coaches than Vrabel. But, I mean, I always thought Vrabel was a good coach. I didn't think Vrabel was a special coach, and all that and a bag of chips coach. This year does kind of make it feel like Vrabel is all that and a bag of chips. But they haven't won the game yet. They've played the easiest schedule I've ever seen for a team to get to the Super Bowl. They've had an unbelievable amount of luck in order to get to the game. Is this going to be like the Chicago Bears team with Lovie Smith that got smoked by the Colts in the Super Bowl when we look back on it? I don't know. Did Vrabel do enough to prove that Vrabel wasn't the problem in Tennessee? Absolutely. But I never believed that Vrabel was the problem. I've always believed that Amy was the problem. Did Vrabel do enough this year in New England to justify him running the franchise as the chief football decision maker? Probably so. But I have a hard time letting go of the extenuating circumstances which have gotten Mike Vrabel to where he is right now. But if he wins the game on Sunday, then it would be a total fuck you to people like me and all the Titans fans, and there's no way around it. If they win on Sunday, I think I have to say that I was 100% unequivocally wrong. If they lose on Sunday, jury's still out, but it's going to get tougher on Vrabel in the future, and I'm not as optimistic that Vrabel will repeat the same success. I also think, too, Vrabel is one of those coaches like Peter Laviolette was in hockey. If you remember, the Predators that first year under Laviolette were really, really good, lost in the first round of the playoffs. Then the second year, they got to the Cup final. The third year, they were the best team in the sport, and then they kind of fell off a little bit after that. And people said, well, Laviolette's message gets stale. And I wonder if, like, that kind of coach, and Laviolette, I love Laviolette, but Laviolette's kind of an asshole as a coach. I wonder if that kind of coach wears off over time, like Parcells, which I think the best comp for Vrabel is Parcells, even though Parcells was an offensive guy and Vrabel's a defensive guy. So we'll see. See, this one guy says, I agree about Vrabel and Amy that I never wanted Vrabel to go. I wanted Vrabel to go. Now, I will continue to say, when it comes to Vrabel, I will continue to say that what I did not want was Rand Carthon running the operation. I wanted his ass fired with Vrabel, and they promoted him, and he ran the operation and made it worse than it was. So make of that what you will. Okay, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, put the notifications on because we might be on, off, all over the place As far as this week is concerned with the Super Bowl, I'll try to make it as close to 2 Central as I can every day, but I cannot promise that. So I am excited, though, for all the content. We're going to talk a lot of Titans. We're going to talk a lot of Salah. We're going to talk a lot of Daboll. We're going to talk a lot of Cam Ward. I'm sure we'll find a lot of people to talk draft with all throughout the course of the week. And, of course, we're going to talk a lot of Vrabel and Sam Darnold in the Jared Stillman Bowl. With that, I bid you all adieu. See you tomorrow from the Super Bowl. Like and subscribe and tell all your friends to like and subscribe.